Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of our CSS Flexbox mini-series. Now in this video we are going to be taking a dive into the flex property in CSS. Now in the previous episode I kind of showed how when you add the flex property to a Flexbox item, it will actually kind of grow as the website or as the window gets bigger, and it'll shrink as the window gets smaller. So it kind of is somewhat of a dynamic sizing like our responsive styling. Except this time we will be looking into the three components of the flex property, which are listed here: flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis, which are basically used to handle the growing and shrinking of different Flexbox items as our container or as our window gets bigger or smaller. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started by opening up our index.html file and then starting our live server. That's the first step, and then that should go ahead and open up our cool website here. Now, in the styling over here, we had the Flex 1 set to only be for the nav button, but what we're actually going to do is I'm actually going to remove Flex 1 from the nav button. That way they're all the same size, or they're all the size they need to be. And then for these nav ULIs, the actual items themselves, I'm going to add a flex of 1. And to show you what that does is that actually makes each of these LI items here the same size, and they kind of all take up the rest of the space that the button does not. And actually, wait, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and remove that, and we're back to this where they only take up as much space as they need. But I'm going to add a couple classes to kind of differentiate between a couple of these to kind of illustrate how this is used. So we're going to create a class of home and then a class of about, just so I can use these. And then we are going to select them by doing .home to select that and .about to select that. And then for this, I'm going to add a flex 1, and watch what happens. Notice as this window gets smaller and bigger, nothing changes except the home. It grows and shrinks along with the website itself. So notice that. And that is what we kind of got into in the last episode. But what I didn't tell you is this flex colon and then 1 is actually a shorthand for flex 110. And what this means is it's actually comprised of 3 sub-properties, you can say. So it's flex grow is 1, and then a flex shrink is 1, and then the flex basis is 0. And what that means is, I'm going to go ahead and remove the flex, is if I actually just save this, notice that the same thing happens. As this thing gets bigger, it grows. As it gets smaller, it shrinks. So yeah, that's basically what we've written by writing flex colon 1. Now you may be wondering, like, what do these 3 different properties kind of do? And to illustrate that, we're going to have to use 2 different items. So we're going to start off with flex grow. When flex grow is set to 1, the item itself will grow as the website gets bigger. And same thing, if I set flex grow on about to also 1, it's kind of like a Flexbox is kind of like a smart thing. Since it has 2 items that each have a flex grow of 1, it will actually evenly distribute the growth to both. A home and about are both growing equally as fast because they're part of the same container. Now, one interesting thing I need to introduce actually before is I'm going to remove these 2, and I'm going to add something called a flex basis. And the flex basis is kind of at the core of flex, and it establishes a baseline size for items. So if I set a flex basis of 100 pixels, and I do the same for this, notice as this thing gets bigger, it creates more extra space here. And the reason for that is because we don't have any flex grow. We don't have any items that are flexing, aka like changing their size. So as this website gets bigger, it's just creating empty space. But notice how by default, elements will only take up the space they need. Contact and testimonials are only as big as the text themselves. But because for this home and about, I set the flex basis equal to 100 pixels, what that means is by default, these items will be 100 pixels wide, if they can be. So this is establishing a sort of baseline. Now, of course, adding a flex-grow of 1 will cause this item to grow as the website gets bigger along with the size. And then if I set, again, if I set a flex grow also here to 1, it will grow equally as fast like that. And what's really cool is we can actually change this. Let's say I wanted to set this to 3. Notice, notice as this site gets bigger, About is growing. Look at About. It is growing, but Home is growing much faster. And in fact, because Home has a flex grow of 3, as shown right here, and About has a flex grow of 1, Home is actually growing 3 times as fast as About. So that's one thing to note. Now, you might be wondering what happens when the website gets smaller. Because if I remove these flex grows here, notice how there's some extra space right here. There's this extra space here on the right. What happens when the website gets too small to handle? And by default, they shrink to kind of fit it. Notice how the items are shrinking, and that's because the flex basis is 100 pixels, but that means it doesn't need to be 100 pixels. So if it can, or if it needs to, it'll shrink the items down. Now, one cool thing to note is I'm actually going to increase this flex basis to make a quick demonstration to 200 each. So that'll make them twice as long by default. So if we make the site bigger, they will not grow. And if we make it smaller, they will shrink. But we can actually add the flex shrink property, which basically governs, like it's similar to flex grow, except it's for when it shrinks. So by default, both of these will have a flex shrink of 1. And what that means is just as the site gets smaller, they will both shrink at the same rate. But what if we wanted to have Home shrink 3 times faster than About? Then notice here, like we're going to get to the baseline size, which is this. And then as we get smaller, Home is shrinking much faster because we gave it a higher number for flex shrink. And it works the same. If we give this a flex grow of 3, and then we give an About a flex grow of 1, guess what will happen? As soon as we hit the baseline height, which is right there, Home will actually grow much faster than About. So notice Home is getting bigger faster, but About is also getting bigger. It's just Home is growing 3 times as fast because it has a number that's 3 times as high. So this was actually a pretty short video. This is the main thing I wanted to go over. Of course, just as a quick recap, when you use the flex:1 property, really what you're doing is you are typing out flex110 because this flex property is actually a shorthand. So imagine I wanted to have a flex basis of 200. So I would, instead of 0, we would do 200 pixels and then flex grow of 3 and then a flex shrink of 3. So by doing flex 3, 200 pixels, I can remove these 3 lines. And then same here. We have a flex grow of 1, a flex shrink of 1, and a basis of 200 pixels. So we could do a flex 1, 1, 200 pixels. So these are equivalent. This flex property is just a shorthand. And then of course doing a flex 1 is just the simplest thing you can do. It's just 110. And when the basis is 0, then the elements will just be whatever size they need to be. So yeah, see here, I changed the flex, I removed the 3 elements and I changed it to the shorthand, and it is still working the exact same. Home is growing faster than About, and it is shrinking faster than About as well. As you can see, when we make the website really small, Home gets really small and About is still shrinking. So yeah, that has pretty much been a deep dive into the Flex CSS property. If you want to see more videos in this mini-series and in the future mini-series, go ahead and check out the playlist linked in the description where I'm uploading daily. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications whenever I post new videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.